Well, first of all, I'd like to extend my salutations to all of you. In this big and strong steel industry, this has become corporate and traditional. In this very successful SteelOrbis meetings, I'll try to do my best. And having the opportunity to be with you is really special. I'm really glad to be with you in this traditional SteelOrbis meetings. Without further ado, I'd like to talk about this important topics. So first and foremost, I'd like to talk about the near-term developments and also medium-term steel industry outlook and mega trends that are going to shape in the industry, and also the environmental problems like the decarbonization. We're going to be having a detailed look at this part, and at the very end, we're going to have the vision and agenda for a sustainable and resilient global steel industry. What should be the vision? And as Ur has mentioned, what is going to be our homework? As time allows, I'll try to talk about these issues. Let me give you some information about World Steel Association here. I'll skip this part. If you have questions at the end, I'll help you. So short term, in the near future, what is the expectations? It's a bit complicated graph, but I'll try to do my best. So where are we? This is a question mark. Let's go a little bit steps behind. As of 2018, world ex-China's crude steel production. Month by month, you can see 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, 22 graphs. So let's have a look at this historical continuity of the evaluation, and let's make some comparisons, monthly comparisons. This is what we need to do. So if you remember, in 2018, the status was good for world steel industry, because 2015, 2016, and 17 was a nightmare for us. China's exportation was near 100 million tons, and the steel industry grew, and China's exportation normalized. So 2018 in this graph, as you can see, is represented with red. This is one of the good times of the world's crude steel production. 2019 started well, but this yellow line, as you can see, goes lower than 2018 curve. And world steel sector, after a very good year, 2019 was under regression pressure. There were two reasons for this. Global automobile sector sales were going down, and global manufacturing regressed, and Turkey and Brazil were in economic turmoil, and steel production was not developed. And at the end of 2019, we discussed expectations for 2020. We thought that there were going to be moderate growth trajectory. However, if we have a look at 2020, this declining dark blue, it started very well, but with the outbreak of pandemic, there came a very sharp decline. Then there was a recovery, but it had accelerated. In November 2020, it reached to the level of 2019, and it recovered itself. As of 2020, 20's end, we recovered ourselves, and we reached back to 2019 level, and then we came back to 2021. In 2021 and 2022, we were expecting normalization, but Ukrainian war, Russia's occupation in Ukraine, turned over the tables, and this light gray shows us to 2022. And in the first 5 months, production tried to stay strong, but then it just again declined. And so what is the level compared to 2021? 20 million tons loss monthly, ex-China world part. 2 to 3 million tons losses are from Europe, and for the rest of the world, there is 2 to 3 million tons losses compared to 2021. But in total, 20 million ton losses occurred. Some countries are going better than 2021, like Turkey. A couple of other countries, compared to 2021, are going on their production with severe losses of production. So what is the level here throughout the years? If we are to make a comparison, like in the beginning of my speech, I said that 2015, 16, 17 were a nightmare for us, and it was 65 million tons. And right now, this is again very similar to those nightmare period. We are going through a very challenging period, and let's have a look at the near term expectations of Steel Association of the World, and this is our expectations as of October 2022. In 2021, there was this historical peak, 1.83, 838 million tons. There were 2.8% growth, and for 2022, forecast was minus 2.3%. But on a yearly basis, there's going to be 4% decline. I think this is opportunistic. There's going to be 3% decline. This is going to be much more realistic. For 2023, even though this is a weak 1% recovery is going to happen, but this is global. Let's have a look at the regional breakdown. So this is again a bit complicated chart, but this right side shows us the expectation for growth. And in the European Union, it starts from the European Union and United Kingdom. So challenging parts are European countries, Russia, Ukraine, and minus 3.5. Russia, Ukraine, independent countries, minus 9%. Other Europe could be evaluated as Turkey, and South America, minus 8%. Turmoil in Brazil and Argentina leads these results. It's not only about war conditions, but also some other countries are suffering from some sharp decline in 2022. And on the contrary, in some developing regions, strong acceleration still occurs, like Middle East, there is 2% growth, and in Africa, there is 2.3% growth, and ASEAN is going to grow by 6%, and in Northern America, there's going to be 1% growth. Maybe this is opportunistic, but it's going to be robust thanks to American economy. So in 2023, expectations, unfortunately, European Union countries and other independent countries, this decline is going to happen again. This decline rate is going to slow down. However, decline is going to occur. And North America, there is going to be improvement from 1% to 2% growth, and good performing countries, developing countries, are going to continue their 2021-2022 performance. Like in ASEAN, there's going to be 6%, and in MENA region, there's going to be 3.9% growth. These are nice indicators, but they are too optimistic to happen, I guess. So I'll skip this part because it gives the same messages. And in the short term, certain developments are going to shape our expectations. And I'll share my evaluations. So first and foremost, there comes a recession fears in the globe. These are realistic evaluations. So in this graph, for the global manufacturing industry, this is PMI values, by the way, as of the midst of 2022, it's like crashed down. There is a declining global manufacturing PMI, and in the recent months, it is showing for the shrinking, and it's below 50. This index, when you have a look at the lower part of this index, if you have a look at the new orders, No, I'm sorry, I'm just clicking on the wrong button. You can see a severe decline. It indicates that the shrinkage in the global market is going to be realistic, and it might also trigger global recession. Well, this is also very interesting. So, who is below 50? We see China. Yes, China has grasped a stability. This is nice. But countries over 50 are declining. The USA, for instance, it's a question mark. Is there a recession in the future? In terms of manufacturing, recession is realistic. Yes, we can say that. Inflation. So the commodity prices have come back throughout the year. During the pandemic, freight prices have increased, but they have normalized. And in the United States, it's really hurting a household. And in our country, it's even worse. Uh, rental prices are increasing, but these are not reflected to official figures. But in a couple of months, it's going to be reflected over official numbers. So American inflation is going to be smoother, and Fed's business is going to be easier, I guess. Automotive sector. In the recent months, because of the troubles in the supply chain, there has been many problems. But as of mid of 2023, a normalization is expected. So global manufacturing and steel demand is going to be appreciated by the automotive sector. So there's going to be demand from the automobile sector. And energy crisis, there is a balance. Even though it's a sensitive balance, it has been reached, but the crisis is going on, and 15% demand shrinkage is very important in this sensitive stability. We are talking about a recession. There's going to be a further decline, but throughout this winter, because of the cold days, it's again a very sensitive balance. The volatility in the prices will continue, and we're going to see upward movements on the prices. And steel is relatively at a better situation in the aluminum compared to aluminum and fertilizers and some other chemicals. Steel is at a better position, but structurally speaking, we are sure of one thing. Two things have been accelerated in Europe, like the renewable energy investments. Because of these war conditions, another support has been given to the renewable energy investments, and also for the energy cleanliness, there is new attempts in Europe. China, in the last 4 decades, has implemented its economic strategies successfully. China's economy is based on big investments, but China is now in need of changing its economic model, because this model has made China dependent on real estate investments. But this is really difficult to change the structure. As you can see on this pie chart, more than 40% of the economy is based on investments, and 1/3 of this 40% is based on infrastructure, and the rest of it is dependent on real estate. So the China's economy is dependent on real estate and infrastructure. So when there is a fluctuation here, it really has repercussions over the economy. They cannot compensate these changes. They try to increase the consumption. They try to make investments on the new technologies, but this is a long way. So what it says to us, this turmoil in China is going to continue. In the last 2 years, we have observed that there were certain restrictions on the real estate sector, and we have seen its reflections over the China steel industry. And in the last month of the year, certain incentives have been brought, and in the steel industry there's going to be stability, and maybe it's going to be positive for 2023. So what about COVID? Will China loosen its stringent policies about COVID? So the recent developments have showed us it's not going to be very easy. So it's going to be a gradual and a long process. But still in next year's May and April, some expect loosenings of the sanctions. So a potential is awaiting in China because a lot of demands have been postponed. So if it happens from the world towards China, still there's going to be a demand. So short term, near term expectations, if I'm to sum it up, then we are going through a very challenging periods, and these difficult conditions appear to be ongoing, but as of the midst of 2023, we have good data to expect more recovery, relative stability in China, automotive sector, or else in the supply chain, general recovery, and its positive reflections over steel industry could be positive indicators for better year. And infrastructure investments are very strong. Some explained it with pandemic support package, but this is a structural change, I believe. Infrastructure investments will go on, and steel industry will also get its share out of that. Energy investments are going on very fast, and other investments will accompany those energy investments, not in 2023 per se, but in other years. We're going to see accompanying investments. In 2023, there is going to be turmoil in China's economy. Yes, global economic conditions have become much more challenging, and countries who are in debt, that are fragile and vulnerable developing economies, to what extent they are going to perform well, whether they are going to have some crisis, this is a question mark that should be answered in the mid and long term. Let's change gears and let's have a look at the medium term outlook. So the established global order seems to have been challenged socio-economically and geopolitically on different fronts. Environmental crisis and very fast technological transformation, multipolar economic order, and in the last 10 to 15 years, big problems have been accumulated. They have not been solved by economies, and polarization. Well, this order does not seem to be sustainable. We have to switch into a new global order, like Bülent and Uğur and Veysel have mentioned. As on one side, we see that there is a soothing situation, but on the next second, we see another turmoil is emerging. Well, the steel structure is going to change as well. World steel demand, its structure will change. What kind of changes are going to happen in the midterm? Hopefully, I'll try to give my examples from construction and automotive sector. Construction is not in favor of changes. It has fragmented structure, like the outsourced contractors and some subcontractors. This is a very fragmented sector. This is difficult to apply changes on the sector, but we believe that in the upcoming decade, construction sector will be transforming itself because of the environmental pressures. Construction sector uses the highest number of materials, and the buildings, the main output of the construction sector, uses the highest amount of energy, and there is also the waste of the construction sector, which is mainly problem in the world. So how this sector is going to change? Digitalization should be widespread, and it's going to pave the way for other processes, process integration after digitalization, and all processes going to be optimized, material use, carbon dioxide release, and also recyclability, reusability of the construction materials. Modeling optimization works are going to be on our agenda. So analysis and modelings are going to be widespread for better environment-friendly uses. And modular constructions, prefabricated components use are going to increase. So those developments will also happen in the next decade. Well, okay. What is its effect over the steel? Steel and cement are go on as the main components in the construction, and majority of these activities will increase the use of steel. Other forms of steel are going to be chosen. For instance, height of the buildings has increased. The flexible use need of the buildings have emerged, and solar energy, other energy components, smart systems, integration to the buildings, circular economy, reusability. Steel is advantageous in terms of these aspects. So on the construction sector, we see a more positive picture for steel industry. Like these infrastructure investments, we'll see more demand for the steel industry. And at the very end, global steel demand will increase because of the strong infrastructure and construction investments. Yes, automotive sector, it has gone through some challenges. Automotive sector is like facing against this perfect storm. And there are three waves of disruption on the automotive sector. One is on-demand mobility. We use applications on our phones. We can have car shares or some taxi services. This is on-demand mobility, and it's started in the beginning of 2010. Then there came electrification. So the inner combustion engines were replaced with electrified engines. And then autonomous mobility on demand will be available as of 2025 onwards. And the last one, especially this autonomous cars, mobility as a service models are going to be very much intermingled with one another. So autonomous cars are going to support on mobility demands. Designs are going to be focusing on efficiency, productivity, not the preferences of the drivers. These are like shuttles or some one person, two passengers cars. These are going to be preferred. So the design changes and demand is going to be affected by that. And also the bill of materials is going to change. So if I'm to sum it up, the effects of the steel, this is from the ID Tech projection. This is an international consultancy company. This is about the global automobile sales. So in the last 3 to 4 years, because of the pandemic, it has recessed a bit. As of 2030, 110 million passengers vehicle sales will be happening, will be available. In India and some similar countries, there's going to be demand increase. This is realistic and this is a positive development for our industry, because last year it was lower than 80 million, but next year or the upcoming years, it's going to be over 100 million. So autonomous level is taken into consideration. They have not given the breakdown based on the electricity cars or not, but let's say 40% of these cars are going to be electrical cars. So 40 million are electrical cars and 60 million are like inner combustion engine cars. In the budget-friendly segments, electrical cars are not going very fast. So 60 million of these cars are going to be equipped with steel heavy structures. This is nice for our industry. So in this ID TechX projection, this is very interesting. These green parts are third-level autonomous cars. There is wheel steering wheel, and you have to be driving on the steering wheel. But the fourth generation autonomous cars, it's totally different. When they enter into the market, the robot access is going to be managing the cars, and robot taxis are going to be available. So it's going to decrease the number of the cars. So as of 2035, there's going to be different developments in our sector. Designs of the cars will be totally different. Demand will be slowing down. Steel is going to be used. So battery protection, these are going to be very important. But on the car bodies, design is going to be different in terms of safety and security. Steel advantages are still going to be important, but glass should also be thought for new designs. Okay, we have so much time for 2035, but this is going to happen. So on the energy side, in 2030, for instance, 200 gigawatts solar energy investment will occur. I guess it was less than 100 gigawatts. So it's going to be doubled. And again, it's going to increase in 2040. So energy demand is going to increase. Electrical steels that are used on the electrical cars will increase on the demand. So decarbonization is very important. That's why I'd like to give you a very detailed look at it. Yes. So what is decarbonization issue? Here, this is from the International Energy Agency's 2022 statement that is in line with the Paris Agreement. Energy-related carbon dioxide emissions. For the net zero scenarios for 2050. So in 2020, it is 35 million tons energy-related carbon emission. In 2030, it's going to be decreased by 30%. In 2040, it's going to be decreased by 40%. And then it's going to be decreased by 30% further, and it's going to be net zero in the future. It's a very challenging process, we know that. And without a revolutionary green transformation, these aims are not going to be realized. So these electrical cars I've given you as an example. On this upper part, you can see this is the estimation of this evaluation. In 2030, electrical cars will have 40% among all this car share. And I've talked about the energy investments in 2010-2019. Green energy investments were around 150 gigawatts per year, but in 2030, it's going to be over 2 times than that. It's going to be over 400 gigawatts per year. Is it realistic? It's very difficult. I don't know whether it's going to be realized, but we know that there's going to be a change which is accelerated day by day. Okay, what is the expectation from the steel industry? As you all know, we are a very energy intensive sector. 2.6 million tons is a direct emission, and the rest of it is an indirect carbon dioxide emission. So 10% of the global carbon dioxide emission comes from steel industry. As you all know, there are different energy emissions from different steel production routes, like the BF-BOF and the IAF 1.4 scrap-based electrical arc furnaces, or 100 kilograms carbon dioxide emission is released. So what is the expectation from the steel industry? This is again from the International Energy Agency's study. If we are around 100 levels, as of 2050, we should be below than 50. So, or else in total, from 3.7, we should go down 1.8, maybe lower than 1.8. Of course, demand is very crucial in this aspect. If this demand is going to be over than the forecasted demand of the IEA, then this average should be changed. This is a very challenging process. Yes, we know that. But how are we going to realize these targets? In the last couple of years, a lot of institutions, this is again International Energy Agency scenario, have made their modelings. They said that if we switch into this kind of investments, it's going to be possible. So there's mission possible partnership. In years, they have updated their scenarios. I think it's a good study. It's rather realistic compared to others. There are certain differences, but all in all, they say that global scrap demand is global scrap supply is going to increase. It should be used very well. Electrical arc furnace capacity should be utilized very well. And 1/3 of these arc furnaces, blast furnaces, should be changed. And we should use hydrogen, and we should use also biomass so that we can reduce carbon dioxide emission, and the rest of it, most of the carbon dioxide emission could be captured, and those captured carbon dioxide could be used in energy in chemistry sector. This is easy to say, but difficult to make, of course.
Well, depending on the raw material here, 105 million tons of DNR was used last year or as the year before. This has to go up to 350 in order for you to grasp such a capacity, probably after 2030. Every month, a new DRI facility has to be opened up in different corners of the world. So how do people who defend this model insist on the feasibility? They say that, I mean, this was really challenging, but 15 years ago, renewable energy was said to be challenging, but now we are benefiting from it. So thanks to technological advancement, the cost decreases. So at least that is what they expect from the steel industry concerning hydrogen, but that is not only limited to this. Well, there is also huge transformation that is expected. For instance, by 2030, it is going to be more circular, the economy. So there is going to be a generational change. The new generations do have different demands, which goes the same for their demand for products and services. So the main argument is that this technological investment is going to reduce the cost. Hydrogen cost is going to reduce that much, that hydrogen and steel production with hydrogen is going to be the most competitive, so they say. So these are like modelings, projections, but looking at the field, what do we see? The first thing that we see is that all large steel producers, almost all of them, actually have launched their decarbonization roadmap, 2050 decarbonization, carbon neutral targets. So what are they doing? Looking at the roadmap, each option that is to reduce carbon release, we see that all options are being evaluated in order to increase energy efficiency. For instance, here we see the World Steel Union, they've got the Step Up program by utilizing the current know-how. They believe that energy efficiency could be increased in all facilities, biomass usage, scrap usage increase, cooperating with the raw material suppliers and more quality raw material provision, reducing the carbon dioxide accordingly, and breakthrough technologies, R&D. These are all really major advancements, and we do believe that they're going to speed up in momentum by 2030. And if things go as to plan, the redirection capacity by 2030 is going to be enjoyed by Europe, and most of which is going to depend on hydrogen usage. So this transformation, especially these new technologies, they do require a high amount of green energy. If not, of course, it would be there wouldn't be any meaning to implement these technologies. Of course, the green energy is not only demanded by the steel industry, but also the overall the world economy. So hydrogen infrastructure is a limitation in that respect. So we are actually prone by the developments out of our sector. It doesn't it is not only us changing our facility. The value chain that we are in should, in a more coordinated manner, transform itself into green energy, hydrogen, for instance. So we do believe that for sure that scrap importance is going to increase. Companies with scrap know-how is going to be more advantageous. And natural gas, DIR, pellets, the green metallics, hydrogen, all of them, of course, will become more valuable and important gradually. That is what we will be experiencing. A final topic. Yes, I mean, this decarbonization performance, how is it going to be measured? And another important topic, which is being inquired, will there be green steel markets developed? Yes, there are certain standards, recommendations that have been proposed in that respect. In order to follow the performance, there's the sliding scales. Gradually, in order for the release to become more stringent. Here, can we group steel, for instance, according to their carbon emission, which is like near zero emission to most emission and can we come up with carbon emission labels, for instance, for steels? And this is for scrap usage. The more you use scrap, the less you release carbon, for instance. A sliding scale is being considered by those studies before 2030. Having such a standard is going to be our anticipation. I mean, our anticipation is that we will have this sliding scales, which is going to more promote low carbon emission steel sectors. Okay, so the global steel sector, what are our vision and what could be our homework? Our vision, where should we go? First of all, we should decide on that. I mean, all these important changes are ongoing, so we should decide as to where we should go. There are different dimensions to take into account: the markets, our products, our facilities, the modernization of our facilities, and the decarbonization of our facilities. And with each one of them, where do we want to go? Because each company has got different conditions, and the decisions to be taken are really important. Where do we want to go, and how are we going to go there? Is going to be the other question to answer. So we talked about markets. We said that major changes could take place. The construction sector is becoming more digital. Infrastructure investment is increasing. So the market for such steel is going to increase also. We talked about green steel. This market is going to grow for sure. It is going to progress. So such progressing markets should be well analyzed, and growth and investment strategies should be adopted accordingly. For instance, this could be a vision and a homework. Growing along the market, which is products, digitalization in all sectors, integration of processes, change optimization work. We have to be prepared for that. Can we have our products on digital logs, libraries, and can we live up to the specifications that are required? How many times can they be reused, for instance? What's its carbon release? In material selection, what kind of efficiency increase could we consider, for instance, and how green it is, how circular it is? These kind of specifications will be sought in the future. Smart facilities, of course, besides we cannot stay out of this big transformation. In terms of digitalization and smart facilities, we should carry on with our investment, but there might be topics popping up which we are not familiar with. Digital ecosystem, for instance, within the same ecosystem, companies cooperating. Once you become digital, you have the possibility to integrate everything, but what bits is going to be integrated, what data is going to be shared, if there is a profit generated, how are we going to share that profit? All these topics have to be well analyzed. This could be another homework. Decarbonization. Well, this is also an ecosystem matter, and it seems that some companies will be more progressive in that respect. Some regions, countries, some companies or else will fall behind. But it's not that a single facility becoming green with its value chain, production, raw material usage, energy usage. We should all be concerning these. Our products should be in the green circular economy. Different dialogue channels should be opened. Different coordination and cooperation should be sought and could be planned. Another factor is that steel has got important advantages: recyclability, reusability, durability, flexibility. If it's not coupled up with necessary decarbonization, steel could become a vital component of decarbonization if it complies with the green requirements. This was all from me. Thank you so very much for listening to me. Thank you so very much, Mr. Barış. Any questions to Mr. Barış? Well, you mentioned about 54. The share of scrap. And polymer usage. And how scrap is going to be found. The speaker is using Azeri Turkish, which is difficult for us to interpret, almost impossible. Well, the global steel demand in the second half of the 80s and 90s and 2000s, it saw a sharp increase. So this steel usage, which increased, now translates itself into scrap increase. By 2030, 400 million tons of scrap will be available in China. This goes the same for Turkey, but the scrap, is it the same scrap? I mean, the topics that you have mentioned, and taking into account certain other factors, we see that the scrap quality is decreasing. And if certain actions are not taken, the scrap quality is going to decrease further on. For instance, when I obtain an average scrap from the market, for purification, I used to use certain metallics, for instance. In the future, I may have to use more metallics, and especially for copper, it may shot up to such levels that, I mean, it could be really interesting. We may need to use really huge, high amounts of metallic. But here, it's really difficult to analyze this. I mean, we would like to actually consider this year, this fact, as to how the scrap quality would evolve in the upcoming years. And we will take into account this. If we can do a successful study in this area, we would contribute a lot, I guess. In automotive, for instance, or as not only in automotive, in during the electrification process, the electric cable, for instance, there is a huge increase in that. So if we cannot separate this, that ends up in steel scrap. So what can be done? We can discuss this with the automotive industry so that cables are separated, collected separately, for instance, and be separated there in that collection area. Certain solutions would be right steps to take for the future. Thank you. Thank you, first and foremost. It was a really awesome presentation. You're coordinating the Scrap Raw Material Association, World Scrap Raw Material Association. So if we were to come up with a mid and long-term strategy for scrap, what should be our roadmap? Well, this is a multidimensional topic, Mr. Uğur. There are certain things that we see starting from scrap. Yes, scrap availability increases, but the demand for it also increases. Electric arc capacity is going to increase as well, and there is a huge question mark there. And as you have mentioned, in the United States especially, there is there is an expansion towards scrap companies. Steel companies do buy scrap companies. The more I retain scrap, the more advantageous I become. The more I expand my business into scrap, the more I become advantageous. The strategical importance of scrap is going to increase. This is evident. So we should adopt certain strategies in this respect. When it comes to iron ore, well, we see that the picture there is brighter, especially, compared to the previous 10 to 15 years. We see that the situation there is more promising, but as I have mentioned to you before, in certain subcategories, the demand there is similar to scrap. It's really limited. The supply almost meets the demand. And for instance, pellets, direct charge, for instance, segments. In this respect, certain solutions may be there in these areas would enable us to proceed, improve ourselves. With coal, of course, for steel producers, the situation is always problematic. We're dependent on certain geographies only for coal, and the environmental pressure on coal is huge. There is a huge uncertainty. It's an uncertainty beyond the scrap uncertainty, the uncertainty in coal. And based on this decarbonization in the coal market, we have got a possibility to fill these bottlenecks. In the long run, of course, it's a huge risk for me. I don't know what can be done, but we, have to prepare ourselves, Mr. Uğur. These are the three topics that have crossed my mind. I am in the construction sector. Digitalization in construction is going to have its impact on steel, so you say. This digitalization, what kind of an impact will it have? Can you give an example? Can you do a simulation for us in that respect? Well, digitalization in construction, it has got sub processes, this construction business. And these sub processes, standardizing them is really difficult because of the geographical conditions, local conditions, but there are certain developments starting from major construction companies and countries. This digitalization now is living up to different levels. Digitalization enables a company to model anything and everything. So in my design, or else, like, digitalization enables the construction company to select design amongst design alternatives that best suits its need. From more like traditional concrete intense designs, there are certain designs whereby steel is more prominent, and it is better because it is less carbon, less material usage, more flexible. Digitalization enables all these calculations to be made much easier and better makes it visible the advantage of using steel, like prefabricated models or as modular methods, for instance. Instead of constructing the whole building with concrete, the carcass of the building could be made with steel and concrete, and the other components could be made of light steel, for instance, by doing the necessary calculations. While digitalization it isn't something that impacts the material selection. It is something to do with your production efficiency. If you want a lead time optimization, yes, you would go for steel, for instance, as a constructor. For instance, when we design a building, we open the profile table. Each steel person has, maybe it will have the carbon grades like green, so on and so forth. And while selecting, maybe we would also be selecting the carbon profile of the steels that we use for our construction. Within 10 years' time, we would have that in our profile tables. Most probably, Europe will switch to this practice because they're aiming at the zero carbon emission. So in that respect, you've mentioned about something really good there. For instance, I mean, with one floor or as two floor buildings, it is suitable to use steel, but for a 4 or as 5-story building, you have to use concrete, unfortunately, because the cost is like difference is 1 to 5. As long as we do not ensure economical viability, efficiency, only through regulations you can do a material change. I mean, before digitalization, you should have a regulation requirement that in order for you to get this residential permit, your carbon level should be 100, for instance. And in order to ensure 100, you have to select certain materials. And maybe that's why the construction companies could like go for steel instead of cement. Yes, thank you so very much for your explanation. I also learn from you. And so what you have mentioned reminds me of a couple of countries now. I mean, a couple of countries, for instance, the UK, with the latest housing support package has brought along certain stringent regulations and even levied a quota. 30% of the construction should be based on modular, modern construction. So UK stipulates now. But our main philosophy here is that such calculations and optimizations should not be regarded only as a cost item, but also should be regarded as an environmentally friendly solution, which would more increase the tendency for steel. And this could be, of course, backed up with a regulation. I mean, the cost price structure is changing with the pressure of sustainability. I mean, yes, that is what we think also. Okay, there are plenty of questions, but let's receive a final question because we are behind our schedule. Well, about the about future raw material, my recommendation is that with the current, we should not be considering the current price structure. For instance, hydrogen cost today is $5 per kg. If it is reduced below $2, it would be called as being feasible. With $5 hydrogen cost, projects which have been announced are shooting up to 25 200, 220 pallets, it is going to be 890 to 900 DRI cost. In a world whereby scrap is only $300 for 800 DRI cost, billions of dollars of investment is being carried out. So, by the way, that's why we have to consider the future prices. And in regards to DAR, the arguments were that if you don't have a natural gas, you cannot do this, you cannot step into this. But now, hydrogen, everybody has hydrogen. And if you've got enough renewable energy, which is the most critical topic, then you are no longer dependent on natural gas. The other one is ore. Turkey doesn't have ore. 5-6 years ago, even Erdemir the total ore was announced to be 80 million tons. Erdemir last year prepared a project in the eastern part of Turkey for 350 million tons of ore. So, I mean, in a world that you import scrap, I mean, you import 25% of the world's scrap, and you can also import ore as well. But in the future, definitely primary, but a new carbon-free primer steel production is going to be valid for us. So the future is a totally different future for us in terms of cost. Well, if we follow what is going on in Europe, if we ask to ourselves as to why people are into such developments, then we could find proper answers to our questions, I guess. Okay, thank you so very much. Well, thank you so very much, Mr. Barış. We manufacture flat steel. In these graphs that you have mentioned, you refer to steel as a whole. And in different resources, we also come across the same. But in the world, the total production, how much of it is long steel and how much flat steel? Do you have a study in that respect? And between the two, there are different differences concerning consumption, which we experienced during the pandemic. Flat steel price was proceeded really independently from the long steel. And my second question, what activities of the government would what activities should the government do in order to promote these two? So the first one, flat, long, or as other certain sub-steels, yes, we've got certain numbers, but the World Steel Association numbers are not that explicit, I guess, especially China. If you, I mean, Chinese numbers, there's this double counting, this and that. It spoils the whole thing. But looking at it regionally, I see that there is, I mean, this flat steel production, for instance. I've seen studies that give a sound forecast. This goes the same for North America. I think that you have to have a look at these researches on a regional base. Coming to your second question, especially concerning these public investments, of course, infrastructure, construction investments become prominent. Of course, it's not only construction, but there is also energy facilities, the machinery there also enjoys the investment of the government. But mostly construction steel is prominent, I guess. Some, of course, most of it would be long steel, some flat steel. Well, in addition to what I have mentioned, you say infrastructure, I mean, people do focus on energy, but in developed countries, the infrastructure has aged a lot. And in general, an infrastructure leap, not only concerning energy, other areas should also be invested into. And climate change. Let's invest on decarbonization, so governments say, but let's also try to adapt ourselves. I mean, climate change adaptation investments could be a component in this picture. I do believe that infrastructure investment could be supporting the steel demand in the upcoming 10, 20, and 30 years. And also long products, construction is going to increase. Thank you very much.